Hey everyone! Today I want to give you a quick look at Report Studio. The main goal here is pretty simple. We're taking those standard text-heavy 12D survey reports and turning them into something you can actually use. Instead of just a flat file, you get a feature-rich spreadsheet, complete with live data, conditional formatting, and a layout that you can fully customize to fit your project. Let's dive in. Right now, the app covers the essentials, everything from pavement conformance and point to point to as-built versus design strings. It handles points versus tin, volume reports, and simple lists. Now, look, we're not pretending to import every single report type 12D can throw at you. Honestly, that would be impossible with all those different CSVs and tab delimited formats floating around. But for the core reports you're using day in and day out, this is going to make your life a whole lot easier. Now, before we dive in, just a quick heads up on macro security. If you're working in the cloud, like on Google Drive, Windows tends to be a bit overprotective and might block the file by default. If it's acting up, don't worry, just right-click the file, go to Properties and check the Unblock box at the bottom. You'll also want to double-check that Enable VBA macros is turned on in your Excel Trust Center settings. Once that's squared away, everything will run perfectly. Alright, let's take a look at the actual spreadsheet. You've got your home sheet right here, and you'll find all your main tools tucked away in the toolbar at the top. To get things moving, we'll just hit Import Reports. Now, you've got two ways to do this. You can simply copy and paste the raw text from 12D directly into this box. Or, if it's easier, you can just browse for the raw file or multiple files on your computer. Either way works. As soon as you hit import, you'll see everything is formatted perfectly. But honestly, here's the best part. It's completely live. Watch this. If I change a design level right here, look at how the formulas and the conditional formatting update instantly. Even the related info, like the vertical summary, stays in sync without you having to lift a finger. It just works. Now, if you want to tweak the look of your report, just jump over to Options. From here, you can toggle different sections on or off, like the vertical summary or those cross-fold columns. You can even add your own custom table headers to make it look exactly how you want. One really handy feature on this sheet is the toggle button. This lets you flip the view back and forth between the raw data and your polished output. Perfect for a quick double check. And finally, we have the reset button. Just a quick heads up on this one. It will take everything back to the original format in a snap, but just remember, any manual tweaks you've made will be cleared out when you hit it. One of the major advantages of extracting data from the original 12D report is the sheer flexibility it gives you. It opens the door to reports that simply weren't possible before. For instance, if I import a standard as-built versus design string report, I now have the ability to repurpose that data for a completely different output. This is where the additional details section in the options dialog becomes a game changer. By simply adding 2 lines, subsoil report and a minimum grade, the entire document is transformed. You'll see it instantly calculate grades and generate dynamic flow direction arrows. And because the data remains live, it's completely interactive. If you adjust a level, the grade, the conditional formatting, and the arrow direction all update automatically. The possibilities are endless once your data is structured correctly, and at Report Studio, that is exactly what we do best. So we've imported the main data, but now let's take a further step towards an even more professional report by dealing with front matter. Front matter in publishing terms is the headers, footers, and covers. Let's look at the headers first. There are important features in headers that are also common to all front matter sheets. The first is the area to be printed. In the case of headers, it will be the columns B to Z and rows 3 downwards. If you want to add additional rows, just insert rows, but always make sure the end sheet row is present. When it comes to columns, refer to the notes at the top of the sheet. Because we'll be amalgamating different sheets, it's important that all sheets have the same number of columns and column widths. Unfortunately, Excel is not very flexible with this, so if you want additional room in columns, use the Merge Columns facility. Note, however, it's perfectly okay to change row heights. Finally, there are what we call place markers in Front Matter. These will be explained in more detail later. And now, footers. These are not strictly footers in Excel terms. It was really a toss-up between calling this section footers or signature block. Whatever this sheet is called, it can, like all other sheets, be placed anywhere you want on the final print. Footers are identical to headers in the way they're formatted. Note the use of place markers on the footer as well. Before moving on to covers, let's take a quick look at the user sheet, which is basically a blank sheet for you to add anything you want. Feel free to ignore it if it's not required in your final report. We use the user sheet to add screenshots to our reports, giving the report that additional professional look. Unlike headers and footers, you can add as many user sheets as you'd like. Just copy the original sheet and use it as normal. You'll notice user sheets have the same formatting rules as headers and footers. Also note place markers can be used on user sheets as well. Okay, so the last Front Matter sheet we need to look at is covers. Now, as you can see, these are a little bit different from the other sheets we've talked about. The main idea here is to have one central spot for all your project covers. For example, you might have one for specific pavement layers with certain tolerance criteria, or maybe a cover just for subsoil drains. On those really large projects, you could end up with dozens of covers, and let's be honest, having a separate sheet for every single one is just impractical. The cover sheet solves this by letting you store everything in one place, neatly organised with start and end markers. Other than that, the formatting is pretty much what you're used to with lots of place markers, as you can see in these examples. The only real difference is this section here, where you specify the name, title and subtitle. That name is what identifies the cover on your home sheet, while the title and subtitle act as special markers, which I'll dive into in just a second. One other handy little feature with covers is the ability to add some blank rows for your final report. Since you might have dozens of different covers all living on one sheet, we wanted to give you a quick way to handle spacing without taking up too much space on the sheet. If you look at the first cover here, in that left-hand column, you'll see the number 10. That's our trigger. When the final report is generated, it'll automatically insert 10 blank rows right at that spot. It's as simple as that. And here we are, back at the home sheet. This is where you'll find your license details and the option to pick a cover for your report. Now, the real heavy lifting happens here with place markers. You've probably already gathered that place markers are just text strings that get swapped out for actual report values right before you hit print. Think of them as a set and forget feature for your Front Matter. The footer is a perfect example. You set up markers like processed by or position once, and you never have to touch that footer again. You just update the marker right here on this sheet, and you're good to go. Oh, and remember what we were just saying about covers? There are a couple of markers specifically for the title and subtitle. When I switch the cover, you'll see both of those values update automatically. Alright, after all that setup, we're finally ready to print our final report. Just go ahead and click that final report button and let's see the magic happen. Now you'll notice a few handy options in the print form. For example, you can choose to have your header on just the first page, every page, or not at all. You've also got total control over which sections to include. You can add page breaks between sections and change the printing order. Once everything looks good to go, just hit Construct Final Report and let's take a look at the finished product.
And there we have it. As you can see on the final report sheet, everything's been pulled together, your place markers are all updated, and it's officially ready for the printer. Just select File, then Print, and you're set. Now, don't worry, if you need to make any last minute tweaks, you can still do that right here. Feel free to adjust row sizes, delete anything extra, change the text, or even add some more page breaks. And hey, if you ever feel like you've tweaked it a bit too much, you can always go back and start fresh. Just hit that final print button again to reset everything back to the original version. To finish things off, let's quickly walk through those last three buttons on the toolbar. First up is the refresh button. Think of this as a quick reset if you hit any small snags. It's not going to do anything scary or delete your data, it's just a handy way to get things back on track if the spreadsheet is having a bit of a bad day. Next, we have settings, which handles three main things. First, it's where you'll pick your report colours. A great tip is to start with your company logo. Actually, AI is fantastic at helping you find a professional colour scheme that matches your branding perfectly. Second, there's a spot to point the software toward your company license, but honestly, we'll just let the admins handle that part. And finally, there's a really helpful tool to import your front matter and colours from an older version of Report Studio. We definitely don't want you to have to redo all that hard work every time we release an update. And that brings us to the About button, the perfect place to wrap things up. Think of this as your gateway to our website. You'll find everything you need there, from deep dive documentation and podcasts to helpful videos. Plus, if you have a Google account, you can even have an interactive chat with our AI experts. They know the ins and outs of Report Studio better than anyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to walk through this with me. I really hope it was helpful. All that's left for me to say is happy reporting.